Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Melbourne Airport's annual Stakeholder Update. It's a pleasure to be able to join you for the first time in my role as Chairman of Australia Pacific Airports Corporation since my appointment in April. Tonight is an important occasion on the APAC calendar where we take the opportunity to report on our performance over the past 12 months and look ahead to our future opportunities. In starting, it is appropriate to acknowledge the contribution of my immediate predecessor, Jack Rich, who served our company with distinction over the past 15 years. Jack was appointed a Director of APAC at its inception and, during his lifetime with the company, oversaw the extraordinary growth of Melbourne Airport since privatisation in 1997. And he was our chairman for the past 3 years. There have been many changes and challenges along the way, for ours is an extremely dynamic industry in every respect. Shortly, our CEO, Chris Woodruff, will reflect on some of those challenges and how they have affected our performance over the past year. Despite the ups and downs, whether man-made or natural, there is one thing that has been certain. That is, our airports are critical components of our national infrastructure. According to a study released by Australian Airports Association earlier this year, Australia's airports generated a total economic contribution of around $17.3 billion. And that's equivalent to around 1.2% of gross domestic product. Beyond their immediate economic footprint, our airports play an important social role in connecting individuals, families and communities with the rest of the country and the rest of the world. At a time of renewed focus on the importance of productive investment in infrastructure and the challenges that governments face in meeting this need, it is useful to reflect on how our airport sector has performed. And according to the Productivity Commission, there has been significant investment in aeronautical infrastructure at Australian airports since 2002, which was when the light-handed regulatory regime was introduced, and significant future investment has also been planned. Overall, airports led investment outcomes compared with other sectors. Here at Melbourne Airport, we are looking at investing more than $1 billion over the next 5 years. Our investment in new terminal facilities, our airfield and aprons, roads and landside facilities will help to underpin Victoria's economic growth and prosperity by providing a gateway to the world for the movement of people, goods and services. The longer-term benefit of this growth and investment is in the form of the returns to our shareholders, who manage the superannuation and retirement incomes for hundreds of thousands of Australians. In this context, we were pleased by the federal government's response to the Productivity Commission inquiry into the economic regulation of airports. The federal government endorsed the continuation of the light-handed regime, and the federal government has been pretty sensible in this respect. It is recognised that our airports are doing their job well, supported by private investment, which means that the Federal Treasurer doesn't have to worry about finding extra money for new runways, terminals or airport roads. Unfortunately, we were not so positive about the federal government's approach to imposing new taxes on airports and our passengers in the last budget. The passenger movement charge, or alternatively known as departure tax, went up by $8 per person to $55 last month. And in a few days from now, the government will reduce certain duty-free allowances for inbound travellers, reducing the revenue earned from duty-free retail sales by several $1 million. The government is also proposing a new $120 million tax on airport operators for the services of the Australian Federal Police, who are already fully funded through the budget to provide airport policing. In our view, these new imposts are poorly designed, and we will continue to urge the government to reconsider them. In any event, we are getting on with the job with planning and delivering the future growth of Melbourne Airport to keep Melbourne, Victoria and Australia connecting to the world 24 hours a day. You will hear tonight more about our plans to provide more capacity both on our airfield and on our road network, building on the projects carried out over the past year. We are also preparing our next master plan for Melbourne Airport, which will help to set the scene for our growth over the next 20 years. It's all part of the exciting future for Melbourne Airport, and along with my fellow directors, the management team and staff, I look forward to working with all of you in helping to make it a reality. Thank you for your support over the past year, including through some of the more challenging days and weeks. And I now introduce Chris Woodruff to review the year in more detail, as well as set the scene for our way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and welcome, David, to your first stakeholder event, and I look forward to many more with you as chairman. Thank you also to our former chairman, Jack Rich. As a foundation member of the APAC board, Jack has seen many things unfold. He's also outlasted 3 prime ministers, 5 federal transport ministers and 4 Victorian premiers. We haven't held the fact that Jack is from New South Wales against him, and despite this, Jack made an outstanding contribution to Melbourne Airport and Victoria's success. Thank you, Jack, and we wish you all the best. Well, welcome and thank you for joining us this evening for our annual stakeholder event. I'd particularly like to thank and welcome those of you who have travelled interstate to be with us tonight. It seems that every year I start by summarising the past year as a good year, but not without its challenges. As we all know, last year certainly lived up to those expectations. While overall passenger numbers were flat, we delivered on some key projects to support our future growth. Tonight, I will outline our plans to drive future growth and ensure that we'll have the landside and airside capacity to meet the future needs of our airline customers and our passengers. As with previous years, tonight's presentation will be framed around our company goals of market share, financial performance, reputation and team. Last year, we revised our first goal to focus on market share rather than passenger numbers, as we felt it better reflects the dynamic aviation industry and the needs of our tourism industry stakeholders. The remaining goals are unchanged, and all of our goals support our purpose to responsibly develop a growing and profitable airport business. Over the past year, due to a variety of causes, there were a number of events that affected our industry. It was yet another year of global economic volatility, particularly in Europe. The strong Australian dollar continued to encourage Australians to travel overseas, and some of our airline customers faced challenges that impacted their operations, be it for a few days or several weeks. Against this backdrop, we had a total of 28.2 million passengers for the year. Compared to the previous year, total passengers remained flat. However, our international passenger numbers grew by 8% to 6.8 million. Continuing to drive this international growth was Asia. China again led the way with 22% growth in passport holders. Taiwan, the Philippines and Japan all recorded more than 10% growth, while Sri Lanka, Vietnam and India also achieved solid growth. More traditional markets such as New Zealand and the USA also grew by 8 and 7% respectively. Our airlines clearly have played a big part in delivering our international growth as they continued to increase capacity to Melbourne throughout the year, including China Southern, who increased services to Guangzhou, Royal Brunei announced Melbourne as its Australian hub and introduced daily services. Jetstar increased its services to Bali. Garuda Airlines increased services to Indonesia, and Qantas continued to progressively increase its A380 services to London and Los Angeles. We've recently welcomed additional A380 services from Singapore Airlines, and Emirates will soon introduce their 20th A380 into service here in Melbourne. And we look forward to welcoming more A380 services in the future. International seat capacity grew by 5% over the last year. Australian passengers made the most of the additional capacity as outbound travellers increased by 9%. Our international growth has undoubtedly steadied in 11-12. However, compared to Brisbane and Sydney, who grew by 5% and 4% respectively, we are still leading international passenger growth among Australia's major airports. We are, however, not complacent about that growth. We compete intensely with other destinations in Australia and overseas for each and every international service that lands here, as airlines choose where they fly. We greatly value the support of our airlines and will continue to work hard to help them achieve great results. We're also committed to building long-term relationships with our source markets and our airlines to sustain our growth. During the year, we commenced a sister airport relationship with Chengdu Qianglu International Airport in China's Sichuan province. The exchange of experience, knowledge and ideas will help us provide better service for our Chinese airline customers and passengers, and keep Melbourne at the forefront of the growth in passengers from China. And speaking of sharing experiences and knowledge, I'd very much like to thank the team from Crown Entertainment. The Crown team has helped us in gaining a better understanding of the Chinese traveller and how best to serve them. Damien Tokalik has played an important role in promoting our ties with key stakeholders in China. He recently took the Melbourne Airport message to a television audience of tens of millions.
他今天从澳大利亚不远万里来到了我们的现场，我们欢迎他。大家好。
And he came back with a prize. Coming home, it was a challenging year for domestic aviation. We experienced some major disruptions which affected our domestic passenger numbers, which declined by 2% on the previous year to 21.5 million. We worked closely with our domestic airlines to continue to support their operations during the difficult times. I think those challenges are largely behind us and everyone is focused on the future. It's great to see Tiger rebuilding its Australian business and continuing to use Melbourne as its base. This includes the recent announcement that they'll be employing an additional 70 people to support their Melbourne operations. Jetstar is also supporting its home state with the largest increase in Melbourne domestic seat capacity, and we thank you for that. We're also continuing to work with Virgin Australia on the refurbishment of Terminal 3 to better reflect their new corporate brand and passenger experience goals. Of course, some of our other customers had to make some difficult decisions during the year on the structure of their businesses. For those affected by these changes, we wish them well in their future endeavours. As Melbourne Airport continues to grow, I'm confident that we'll see more jobs created across the diverse range of businesses that support our operations, not to mention our own capital investment programme. Looking forward, as airlines seek to consolidate the huge increases in seat capacity, I think it's fair to say that we won't see the same level of growth in our international market as we've seen in the past 3 years. The domestic market, however, should return to growth with increased capacity and competition. We're not only the nation's second busiest passenger airport, we also account for around 30% of Australian air freight. Of course, some pieces of air freight attract more attention than others. We were delighted to be the point of departure and return for Black Caviar's triumphant visit to Royal Ascot. With around 80% of air freight carried by passenger aircraft, our growth in passenger services also means greater capacity for Victorian exporters. So, when Royal Brunei Airlines announced it was introducing daily flights between Melbourne and Brunei, it was not only great for business, education and tourism, it also provides Victorian exporters with better access to an important Asian market. You only need to reflect on the current debate around Sydney's second airport to fully appreciate the importance of an international airport that's open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. A truly global city doesn't put up the shutters at 11 o'clock every night, just as the rest of the world is getting on with its business. Our capacity to keep growing will make a significant contribution to the economic and social well-being of Victoria. To this end, we will continue to work closely with our partners in government, business and industry as part of Team Victoria to promote Melbourne and Victoria as Australia's premier destination. Over the past year, we've intensified our focus on providing great service for our airlines and passengers. We've enhanced our customer service strategy and we're rolling out our new customer service charter. We're also working towards accreditation to the International Customer Service Standard, which will provide a structure and focus on service in much the same way that safety accreditation does for our workplace health and safety performance. It also includes additional service training for around 250 frontline staff. One of our customer service initiatives has been to work with our colleagues in customs to increase the take-up of the automated smart gate process for Australian and New Zealand passport holders. Aided by new wayfinding tools, we've increased the number of eligible passport holders using smart gate. In fact, we've exceeded the target. This collaborative approach has resulted in a better arrivals experience for our passengers and improved the efficiency of the process. Another example is our work with our Chinese airline customers in facilitating large groups of Chinese visitors through the international departure process. Aided by a Chinese-speaking guide, we assist groups with the check-in, security and customs processes. This initiative has been well received by both our airlines and passengers. I'm pleased with what we've achieved financially this year. Aeronautical revenue increased by 5% to $248 million and is aligned with our international passenger growth. Retail revenue, including revenue from our car parks, increased by 4% to $248 million. This is a good achievement, particularly in light of the continuing strong Australian dollar and the decline in domestic passengers. It's also testament to the success of the redeveloped international departures retail area. Revenue from property increased by 10% to $91 million. These results delivered an increase in total revenue of 5% to $589 million. Increased staff and service and utility costs saw operating costs increase by 11% to $153 million. Operating profit increased by 3% to $436 million. And profit before tax and change in fair value of investment property declined by 3% to $225 million. Following 2 years of steady returns, our annual shareholder return increased by 7% to $141 million for the year. Our capital expenditure grew by a very impressive 39% to $205 million. It reflects the fact that being prepared for passenger growth is key to our success. This year, we'll spend around $300 million. And over the next 5 years, more than $1 billion is budgeted to support growth at Victoria's aviation gateway. I'm pleased to say that over the last year, we've successfully delivered some key projects to support that growth. At last year's stakeholder event, many of those key projects were underway or about to commence. Let's look at what we've done since we last met. On our airfield, we completed the runway overlay project. We opened 2 new gates in Terminal 2 and completed our aerobridge upgrade programme, increasing our capacity and capability for handling larger aircraft and more of them. We also completed the redevelopment of our international terminal retail area. This magnificent new space creates a real sense of Melbourne's style and some of our favourite tastes and flavours. In international arrivals, there are now 2 more baggage carousels and more space for passenger processing. And I'm very pleased to say that we're already seeing the benefits of these improvements in our passenger surveys. Outside of the terminal, we completed the first stage of our forecourt redevelopment. We added more general public pickup bays and separated these from buses and taxis. We also introduced super ranks for our taxis and Skybus to streamline the queuing experience. And we introduced the ring and ride wait zone. You can now wait for your arriving passengers. You can now wait for your arriving passengers free. Yes, free. And I'll tell you what, running airports for 23 years, I still cannot get used to saying the F word. Later in the year, we'll commence stage 2 of the forecourt upgrade, where we'll add another lane and improve the northern exit. And looking further afield, we supported the growth of our freight and business park clients, completing new facilities for Tolden Arter and Primus. We expanded the Menzies Freight facility, and we commenced construction on the new Melbourne Cargo Centre, a new home for the Australian Federal Police, and facilities for Fellows and Borders Express. And soon, thanks to Mercedes-Benz and Air Melbourne, you'll be able to take a helicopter trip from Melbourne Airport to the city in roughly 10 minutes. We think this will appeal to those travellers who are looking for a new way to arrive. We know that improving access to the airport is a critical issue and of concern to our stakeholders. Getting people to and from the airport efficiently is becoming just as important as what happens in our terminals and on the airfield. Last month, we opened our $26 million APAC drive on-ramp, providing a new exit from the airport to the Tullamarine Freeway for city-bound traffic. Completed on time and on budget, the on-ramp will divert 15 to 20% of traffic away from the main terminal area. The project saw some 67,000 hours worked, including overnight work and closures of the Tullamarine Freeway, all with 0 lost time injuries. Let's take a little look at what was involved.
Leaving Melbourne Airport from the southern end has become quicker and easier for city-bound traffic, with the extension of APAC Drive providing an additional entry to the Tullamarine Freeway. APAC Drive on-ramp was opened on the 18th of July 2012. At 1.5 kilometres long, the dual-lane on-ramp passes over the outdoor long-term car park and Tullamarine Freeway lanes. It then merges into city-bound lanes of the freeway just before Mickleham Road. Construction of APAC Drive on-ramp took place over 12 months and was delivered on time and within its $26 million budget. Almost 70,000 construction hours went into building the elevated road, which was the work of around 360 staff from Melbourne Airport, major project partners McConnell, Dowell and Becker, and other contractors. Materials for the structure included 90 precast concrete girders, 9,000 tonnes of in-situ concrete and 3 52-metre steel girders that were transported more than 500 kilometres. Major construction works took place at night, at times closing down all freeway lanes heading in one direction. The project reached a pivotal point when it came to constructing Pier 13 using unique methodology. Overnight, a 280-tonne headstock was lifted with hydraulic jacks and positioned with a gantry assembly. This process was a success and saved the project both time and money. Now open, APAC Drive on-ramp is expected to take about 15 to 20% of traffic heading away from the airport's southern end, getting visitors and passengers on their way quicker while reducing congestion throughout the airport's road network. The completion of APAC Drive on-ramp is another Melbourne Airport infrastructure project that delivers our promise of making your getaway easier.
Now that is a sexy road. We'll be undertaking further improvements to our airport road network in coming months, including a new entrance to the outdoor long-term car park, an additional lane on Melrose Drive, an additional airport-bound lane on Terminal Drive, extending Francis Briggs Road, extending Airport Drive. We're working hard to improve the roads on the airport precinct. We also know that improvements are needed getting into the airport. We're working with the state government on 2 key studies to improve ground transport access. The Melbourne Airport Land Access Study is assessing options for the most efficient, equitable and sustainable way to access the airport, including looking at the widening of the Tullamarine Freeway, a rapid bus option and improving bus access for current services. The Melbourne Airport Rail Link study is also reviewing rail link access options. And just to clear up any questions, we support a rail link to Melbourne Airport. A rail link will be an important element of our future ground transport needs. And with our rate of growth and future capacity capabilities, it makes sense to have a train to Melbourne Airport before any other regional location. While these studies into our future transport options are underway, we already have the world's best airport express bus service. Skybus averages 280 trips a day and carries nearly 10% of our total passengers. We'll continue to work with the state on possible freeway solutions to help maintain Skybus's service frequency and trip times. We also have a grand vision for improving access to Melbourne Airport in the long term. It will improve our landside capacity and it will reduce travel time. Our vision is for a new, single-direction, elevated road that will sit above our existing road infrastructure, in line with the safest and most efficient terminal designs. Pedestrians and cars will be separated. Passenger pickups and drop-offs will be within new multi-level structures adjacent to the main terminals. The project is still in its early stages. It's also several years from completion, but I wanted to let you all know that we're thinking ahead and we're thinking big. It will be a significant investment, up to $300 million, and it will be a major construction undertaking. But it's the kind of project that's necessary for us to meet the future demand for access to Melbourne Airport. Its working title is the mother of all elevated roads. But we're open for any naming or branding offers at the right price, of course. In terms of our plans to expand our airside capacity, we have room to grow. We can easily accommodate the 60 million passengers who are forecast to pass through here by 2030. Even then, we'll still have airfield capacity to accommodate more passengers. Our proposal to build a new domestic terminal facility is a strong vote of confidence in the domestic aviation market. The Southern Precinct Project Stage 1 will provide capacity for an additional 20 million domestic passengers with more aircraft parking bays, more apron, more supporting landside infrastructure, including 2 multi-level ground transport interchanges and significant road upgrades. We plan to submit the draft major development plan to the Commonwealth shortly. Subject to board and planning approvals and commercial negotiations with our airlines, we aim to start the first phase of major construction work in the new year and have the terminal ready for its first passengers in the second half of 2014. We're also working on our next master plan, which will shape what Melbourne Airport will look like over the next 20 years as we meet the future needs of our airline customers and passengers. The master plan will be subject to discussion and consultation before it's submitted to the Commonwealth for approval. Our next master plan will also include more information about the orientation of our third runway. A third and fourth runway have always been included in the master plan, but we're now approaching that point where we need to indicate when and where we'll need to build that third runway. We're currently finalising the detailed technical studies and consultation that's needed to make that decision. And it should be noted that while the master plan will indicate a preferred orientation of the third runway, a separate consultation and approval process is required prior to construction. And we look forward to sharing more information with you about the runway and our overall development plans in the coming months. The daily operation of Melbourne Airport depends on the commitment and cooperation of a number of stakeholders. Building and sustaining strong relationships is critical to our success. All of us here tonight contribute to that success. Each year, we conduct an audit of our stakeholders to measure our performance. The feedback is always frank and fearless and incredibly valuable. Previously, you've wanted to hear more about how we're managing our growth. Now, we think we're getting better at this. This year, we exceeded our targets for both quality of relationships and quality of communications at 97% and 91% respectively. Now, these headline figures are pleasing, but, as always, the audit gave us some rich insights into what is concerning you and what requires our attention. The big issue for this year is the need to provide a solution to our road access issues. As I mentioned earlier, we're in the early stages, but I look forward to sharing with you as we progress plans for the mother of all elevated roads. It's been a busy year in the regulatory and policy area. The federal government issued its response to the Productivity Commission inquiry into the economic regulation of airport services. It found that for the most part, the current light-handed regime is working pretty well and has delivered investment and growth in airport infrastructure. As our chairman noted earlier, the federal government has increased its taxes and charges on airport users. The passenger movement charge has gone up by $8 a passenger, and in a few days, the arrivals duty-free allowance for cigarettes and tobacco will be slashed. This will have a major revenue and operational consequences for our airports. Next year, the government plans to introduce a new $120 million tax for airport policing. These decisions are bad for airports, our customers and our passengers. They will increase the cost of air travel. We'll continue to work with our industry colleagues in trying to have these new taxes overturned. We participated in the state government's review of Melbourne's urban growth boundaries. On the whole, the outcomes were sensible and reflected the airport's economic and social significance and the importance of protecting our curfew-free status. There's also been an inquiry into Victoria's taxi and hire car industry. Professor Alan Fells's draft report makes some recommendations for taxis and hire car services at Melbourne Airport, including a booking service for hire cars. As a major centre of activity for taxis and hire cars, we are keenly interested in the future direction of this industry and will continue to work with government and industry to improve taxi and hire car services for all of our travellers. We also continued discussions with industry and community through our two important forums, the Planning Coordination Forum and the Community Aviation Consultation Group. These forums are valuable for the sharing of information and ideas on how we can work together to continue to improve our growth, our operation. Thank you to everyone involved in these forums. We really, really appreciate your time and input. We recognise the role Melbourne Airport plays in the local community. We believe in playing our part to support the social, economic and cultural well-being of our city and state. During the year, we expanded our support for Western Chances as they continue to assist talented young people in our western suburbs to realise their potential. The Salvation Army is one of our valued community partners. As Airport Chaplain, Major Winton Knopp continued his invaluable support to passengers and the airport community. Winton also recently extended his support and officiated his first wedding at Melbourne Airport. Getting married at Melbourne Airport has to be the most perfect start to married life. We also continued our support for the Salvation Army's programmes to help those families affected by homelessness and support for asylum seekers. As their new training facility takes shape on Melrose Drive, we're building on our association with the Essendon Football Club. In the last year, hundreds of young players and adult coaches from Melbourne's northwest participated in the skills clinics run by the Bombers with our support. Let's hope it leads to improved results next year. We've also started working with the Western Bulldogs on the programmes to help international students settle into Melbourne and to enrich their experiences through our great Australian game. We're passionate about what our city offers interstate and international visitors, and we continue to work with partners in the tourism industry. We're proud sponsors of Destination Melbourne's Tourism Industry Leadership Programme and the RACV Victorian Tourism Awards, with Melbourne Museum winning the Major Attraction Award. The museum went on to also win their category at the Qantas Australian Tourism Awards. Congratulations to all involved. Protecting our environment is something that we place a high value on, both on and off the airport. With water management a major issue across the country, we've partnered with the state government, industry bodies and 200 local landholders to revitalise the Maribyrnong River. The project is the largest ever collaborative environmental project in Victoria, and it will help improve pest, plant and animal control, as well as develop a multi-use trail from Brimbank to the Organ Pipes National Park. We also have plans to improve our energy security and reduce our carbon emissions through the installation of a gas-fired tri-generation power plant to supply our electrical, hot and cold water requirements. This initiative will help to reduce our carbon footprint by up to 50%. Subject to final board approval, this project will be fully operational in 2014. Keeping our passengers and staff safe and secure is always a priority for us. Last year, we worked closely with the federal government on 2 initiatives. We hosted a body scanning equipment trial, with new equipment to be introduced later this year, and we introduced new scanning technology for liquids, aerosols and gels. In May, with Victoria Police, we hosted the largest biohazardous material emergency exercise ever undertaken in Australia. Exercise Hades tested our interagency relationships, our processes and our facilities to ensure we continue to provide a safe and secure airport. From a safety perspective, in May, we achieved accreditation for AS 4801, the Australian Standard Safety Management System, with a stringent framework that guides our workplace health and safety practices. This is a great achievement. And as our construction program accelerates, working smart and safely is more important than ever. Our final goal is the foundation for everything we do, our people, as it's our people who deliver results. With a growing number of passengers to serve and a growing number of construction projects underway, there's an ever-changing environment and ever-growing requirements placed on their team. I think they do an amazing job. Our success is also testament to everyone in this room tonight. As I said earlier, we depend on the support and cooperation of many people. Let's now take a short look at some of the behind-the-scenes processes and people who help run our operations and make them run smoothly. That's one sexy baggage system, isn't it? Goes along with our sexy new road. Last year's staff survey results showed that engagement rose almost 6%. The results show that our people are committed to their jobs, their teams, and to the airport itself. Of course, there are areas that we need to develop further, improving communications and acknowledging the good work the team does. We're listening to what our team is saying, we're doing something with that feedback. 2 years ago, we refreshed our company values, and every day, as we continue our cultural journey, we strive to live by these values in all aspects of our business and in all of our interactions with our colleagues and our customers. To that end, as I mentioned earlier, I think my team does a fantastic job, and I'd like to thank them all for their commitment and passion for our business. As Victoria's aviation gateway, Melbourne Airport makes a vital contribution to the economic prosperity and social and cultural well-being of our wonderful city and state. We also operate in a very competitive, challenging and dynamic industry. Tonight, I've outlined our achievements for the past year and our future plans and priorities. To recap, $200 million of capital expenditure delivered, a safer runway, new baggage carousels, new gates, upgraded aerobridges, the first stage of our forecourt redevelopment, and a brand new sexy $26 million freeway on-ramp. This year, with around $300 million of capital expenditure budgeted, we'll get stuck into work on our new terminal. We'll continue to make it easier to get in and out of Melbourne Airport, and we'll get going on the detailed planning for the mother of all elevated roads, including maybe a catchier name. The release of our master plan will also be a focus to shape the direction of our development over the next 20 years. Plus, we'll continue to work hard to keep growing the destinations we serve for the benefit of Victoria's tourism industry. We're absolutely looking ahead with excitement. But we also recognise that our success is the result of the combined efforts of our team, our service providers, our customers, our stakeholders across industry, government and the community. And we recognise that it will take a team effort to realise the opportunities that are in front of us. Over the next 5 years, we are spending more than $1 billion on making Melbourne Airport Australia's premier airport. Thank you for your ongoing support, and I hope you'll join us again next year to reflect on another year of achievements. Thank you very much.